Hello everyone, I cordially welcome you all to another video from the React tutorial series, and in this video we are going to discuss Memo in React. So without any delay, let's get started. So before we get started with Memo, let's discuss memoization in light of React. It is of no doubt that React is faster than majority of the JavaScript frameworks in the market, and due to its improved performance, it is so popular and in high demand. But as a developer, it is important for us to understand how React handles UI modification so efficiently. One of the most popular methods for optimizing the speed of the application is to prevent our application from unnecessary rendering. This can be done by memoization of the code in the React component. Now, if you are not sure what is memoization, it is a caching mechanism which is used to store the result of expensive functions for some arguments passed to it. In case if same arguments are passed, it avoids the memory intensive expensive calculation and returns the result from the browser cache. Okay? So if you are not so sure what I am talking about, let me walk an extra mile for you. If you have watched our previous video, you know there we talked about pure components in React. Okay? So there I already told we can handle unnecessary rendering in React by making components pure. But one thing which I mentioned is that works in class component only, as we have to write pure component in class components. Okay, so you might have a question, why can't we use pure component in function components? Yes, it is true, previously we couldn't use it, but now due to a concept of memo in React, we can use the exact same concept of pure components just in a different way. And if you're not sure what is memoization, just understand, suppose you have a function which takes a lot of time for its computation and then returns a result. So by memoization, what you do, for the arguments passed to the function, you store the value in memory. So what happens, whenever the same arguments are passed again and again, not every time your browser or your machine is going to calculate that. If the arguments passed to it are same as that of the arguments stored in the browser cache, it will just return the result without calculation. So by this you can understand this improves the application performance to a great extent. Now we come to our main topic, that is React Memo. React components are designed to be re-rendered on change of props or state data. Though in general this is the norm, but in cases it reduces the application performance. For example, for any state change in the parent component, all the child components will re-render, even with the same props. This highly increases the re-render time. To avoid this, we use React Memo. So if you have watched our previous video, you already know what we are talking about. There I have showed you an exact same example where I showed if your state value changes in the parent component, your parent component will re-render. Not only that, it will also try to re-render your child component. But as we were using pure component there, so it was not re-rendering again and again. Here also we are going to do the exact same thing for functional components using Memo. So what is a memo, or what are memo in React? So React Memo is a HOC, basically higher order component provided by React. This wraps around a component and memoizes the rendered output such that for same props passed, it doesn't re-render the entire child component and reuses the last rendered result. React Memo is mainly used with functional components, as for class components, we already have React.PureComponent, which automatically handles the should component update on its own. Okay? So I hope if you have watched our previous video, you can relate to what I am talking about. In case you haven't watched, you can watch it after this video. But here also I will consider that all of you are new, so I am going to explain everything from scratch. Okay? Another thing, when should we use Memo? Not all components should be wrapped with React Memo, as in majority of the cases it is an overkill. So React Memo should be considered in the following cases. Point number 1. Use React Memo if the component is heavy and the component renders quite often. Use with child components if there is any possibility of unnecessary re-rendering of child components due to change in parent component in React. And third, always use with pure components. Now without wasting further time in theory, let's go to our VS Code and understand by doing a hands-on. We are back to our VS Code, and here you can see I have created a folder or a directory named memo, and inside it we have index.tsx file. This file basically holds our homepage component. But this time the homepage component is not a class component but a function component, okay? And similarly we have our parent component as app.tsx. So what we have done here, our parent component app is basically a functional component. Inside that functional component, we have used another hook which is known as useState. So I have already told multiple times that useState accepts one argument as the initial state of the variable it returns. So here useState returns two things. One is the state variable and another is the method to update the state variable, okay? And by default, the value of this text variable is nothing, just an empty pair of quotes, okay? Within the return, we have rendered our home page by passing the required props which it accepts. Apart from that, we have an input type text which holds the value of the text variable, and whenever we type anything on that input type text, it basically updates the text variable, okay? Now we go to our child component. In the home page, we have mentioned that it requires two data as props, the first name and last name, and we render hello, the first name and last name, in the h1 tag. Now we come to the main part of today's video. That is, we have wrapped our child component memo, and memo accepts the component and optionally accepts another method for comparison. So even if you don't write this method, it is not a headache. But this method comes handy when you need to do custom comparison with respect to memo. Let me explain you. Here I have just written this is equal function just to explain this feature. What happens? Basically when you pass another function in memo, it basically uses this function to compare whether it should render or not. Here we have mentioned an is equal method which has the previous props and accepts the current props. Now if the props have their first name same, it says return true, that is the arguments are equal. So whenever it is returned true, our component will not re-render. But in case they are different, it will return false and our component is going to re-render. Even if you don't pass this, it is not a headache. By default, memo uses shallow comparison method to compare the props which are passed to it. And another thing is, inside memo, React uses object.is method to compare the values passed to it. Basically the component and props I am talking about. Now one thing you must understand, that object.is is extremely secure. What happens, it not only compares the values, but in case of objects, it also compares whether those objects are basically same. That is, they point to the same memory space. Okay. So we have done our work. Let's run and see if our application is working. So we'll write npm start to start our application. Let's wait for some time until our application starts. So our application has bootstrapped and let's see if it's working. So I have to write here one console message just to let you know if it is rendering multiple times. So I will write child rendering. And now whenever we type anything, see, our child component is not re-rendering multiple times, even though the state variable of our parent component is getting updated. This is the beauty of React, and this is the beauty of memo. By using memo, or basically using memo, by implementing the concept of pure component, we can highly optimize our React application. Okay. Now let's go back to our slide. I hope you like this video. In case you like this video, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We are going to bring more videos in the future. For any queries, doubts, suggestions or feedbacks, feel free to post them in the comment section. We are going to reply. And in case if you have not subscribed till now, I will highly request you to subscribe this channel, as this shows that you are supporting us. You can let us know your thoughts, and see you for now. Let's meet in the next video. Bye.